have better answers.
Right?
No, we didn't really talk about Down Along Highway 90 anyway. But we've got, we can also plug this one too.
Yeah, let's do it.
I got them all. I've got all
Me
kinds of
too.
stuff.
All right. I'm working on getting the Instagram up. All right. There it goes. Okay. So for anybody who may be watching or watching in the future, welcome to another Inspiration Behind the Stories. I'm here. It was supposed to be, we're not getting blown off. Rock on. Check this out. Well, we're minimally here with Ben and to talk about actually several titles that he has coming out because he's fancy. And we may actually have, excuse me, prolific. And we may actually have the author of Nobody Effing Important or No Fucks Given by Nobody Effing Important. I'm guessing everyone's having difficulty logging in, which I've been having a lot of technical issues lately. I don't know if I think it must be my laptop or something. But anyway. So for those of you who may not know Ben or Ben, Ben, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ben. With an exclamation point.
Hey, and what do you do?
I am one of the acquisition editors / manuscript editors at Running Wild Press, and which means I help select the titles that we will publish, and then I get assigned titles to actually edit.
This is all true. And now
and I'm also a Running Wild Press author.
He is, yes.
Nice.
And you're a prolific author.
A prolific author, yes.
You can show them some of the titles that you
have.
Here's
the latest. Down Along Highway 90.
Yeah. And
I didn't know that was out.
It's out.
It just came
and
out.
100,000 copies sold start with you.
Liar.
Well, it's got to start with somebody.
Well, that's true. It does have to start with somebody.
Yeah. But the other one that is freshly out, I have a short story in this one. It's not my work, but it's the 27 stories for the LA wildfire anthology, all proceeds going to the Habitat for Humanity.
Yes.
27 stories.
Super cool.
And we've actually already had that one at a couple of different conferences. So it's been pretty solid. And now this lovely gentleman here, how would you like to go by? What would you like to go by?
Nobody effing important.
All right. If that's what you want.
My face is covered because my face is not important.
That always makes me cringe.
The words are important, not the face.
No, I think it's all important. But so tell us about your creative nonfiction piece.
Yeah, so it's a little bit about going to Iraq, a little bit before Iraq. Most war stories, they kind of gloss over the whole basic training, getting the call like, hey, we're deploying, and then, making it to Iraq. And so there's a lot of like pre-war stuff that I think gets glossed over in a lot of these war novels and stuff. And I think it's important to kind of show the transition going from a civilian and then, going through basic, and then you kind of become a different person, and then you go to combat, and then you kind of start losing yourself even more there. And so it's kind of a struggle to keep your sanity, keep who you are. And so, I spent 15 months on deployment, 13 months was in Iraq, 5 months I was at Abu Ghraib prison. And so it's kind of just a journey from, the beginning to the end. And so that's the first book, kind of gets you into Iraq. And then I'm working on the second book now, which kind of delves more into the Abu Ghraib stuff. If a lot of people remember the the prisoner abuse stuff that came out where they had, soldiers, holding dog leashes around their neck and stuff like that. And so Abu Ghraib kind of became infamous, and I was there during that time. And so it's kind of a reflection on all of that, kind of the disillusionment of a soldier going from being gung-ho, very pro-war to what the fuck are we doing here and why are people dying for and that kind of thing. And so, yeah.
And actually, so that's where I was going to go next. So I've never been in the military. I'm a wuss. So I need to ask both of you, what did you think the military was going to be like before you joined? Like, what did you think you were getting into?
I'll let Ben go first since he went in first.
I was thinking that's we joined in two totally different situations, but because I went into the Army first in '83, and it was basically I went in because it was I was a financial refugee because nobody remembers this, but in the Reagan years, interest rates were 19%. And I grew up in a rural community in South Central Kentucky where the farmers were hurting. And when the farmers hurt, the whole community hurts because that's where the money comes from. And they couldn't afford a loan. They kept telling them, well, just get another loan, take another loan out, take another loan. And they couldn't pay off the loan that they had because farming, if you don't get rain, you don't get growth. You don't get growth, you don't get crops. You don't get crops, you don't get paid. And so, but Ronald Reagan had a system working out. He was actually outspending the Soviets. He was going to let capitalism take over. He pretty much told the Soviets, if you can keep up, because here we go. And they were given tremendous bonuses in the Army for a 4-year enlistment in the infantry. It was $8,000 at the time. Right off the street, that was a lot of money. And but still a lot of money. I only went in for 2 years into the Army though, and it was I had really no expectations. It was go in, do what you're told to do. And some of the best advice I got was from the recruiter who told me, if they tell you to dig a foxhole in the sidewalk with a spoon, pick up the spoon and start digging. I said, no, okay.
Yeah.
How long can it last? It's only 2 years. How big of a foxhole can I dig in 2 years? But and so that was the selling point for me though, was to get out of Kentucky, and I got the chance to go to Germany for 20 months. And that was what other chance was I going to have to get to do. So the adventure of it, all I got to do is just dig a foxhole on the sidewalk with a spoon, and I get to spend 20 months in Germany, and so that was the selling point.
Okay. So, young man, Mr.
Yeah,
Florida.
my story was a little bit different because I was they call it the GWAT era, so the Global War on Terrorism, and I joined like a month after 9/11, so the September 11th attacks happened, and I just kind of wanted to do my part, so I ended up joining the Army Reserves, and that's kind of how I got into it. And then I went in, I was 19 when I signed up. I went to basic when I was 20, and a year later I got activated and sent to Iraq, and I turned 21 on deployment. So it was kind of no idea I would ever join the Army. And so I didn't really have much expectations as far as because I didn't really know much about the military. I've talked to Vietnam vets, but that was a totally different era. And so I kind of idolized that era. I read a lot of books about, the things they carry. We read about that in high school and stuff. And so I kind of had this romanticized version of Vietnam. And then so when I went into the Army, I thought it was this is going to be this great fighting force and everything's going to be a smooth, well-oiled machine. And as you find out in the book, it's not exactly that way. So not to give too much away, but yeah, that's kind of my expectation was pretty high as far as like thinking everything was going to be tip top shape.
Mm.
And then you get in there and you realize it's nothing like you would think. There's no books that really do it justice.
So what actually inspired you guys to do the deep plunge and actually get your experiences in recorded?
Yeah, I'm gonna let nobody effing important go first this time.
So you're talking about like writing, like what made us write or what made us join?
What made you write? Because you could have written about anything in reality, right?
Yeah. So for me, it was surviving Iraq. So when I was at Abu Ghraib prison, our base got attacked all the time. I got a little plaque on my wall that says, I survived over 26 enemy attacks. I've seen prisoner abuse. I mean, up close. I've seen dead Iraqis with like half their face shot off. I've seen a lot of horrible shit. And then when I came back, I was trying to tell people, the truth about the war. And at the time, nobody wanted to kind of hear that. And so I just kind of brushed it off and just stopped talking about it, kind of internalized it a lot and just kind of tried to drink it away. And I was at the University of Florida because I was going into journalism school. So I was like, oh, man, I can maybe get into journalism and, I could write about stuff that I know and stuff that I've seen. And then I got into journalism and kind of found out there's not a lot of truth in journalism. But my last semester, they made me take a lit class. And I was so pissed because I was like, man, I've taken all these English classes, all these journalism classes. Why do I need to take a lit class? I was like, this is a waste of time. I was pissed. But, man, that class changed my life. Like I remember because we started reading like The Coquette and The Scarlet Letter. And one of my favorites was Streetcar Named Desire. And then we started analyzing all of them. And then we, that's when like the light bulb went off. I was like, man, all these people are challenging societal issues and fiction, and writing. And I was like, man, this is what I want to do. And that's kind of when I shifted away from journalism a little bit. I did go into journalism and I was a writer at a newspaper for a while, but that class and, those books always stuck with me of like, oh man, I could really challenge stuff and then write about it. And that's kind of what drove me into wanting to write a book. And then, eventually I got into the University of Tampa's MFA program. And then that kind of really ratcheted things up. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. Because I wanted to talk about all the things I couldn't talk to people about. I didn't have anybody to talk to. Everybody wanted the war story. They wanted the American flag, wrapped up and spoon-fed to them. They didn't want the truth, which is a lot of negative stuff. And people didn't want to come to that realization. That's something I've witnessed firsthand and kind of, had to deal with disillusionment. So.
Got it. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, well, just getting into the writing part was I've always written, and I got an award in the 6th grade, Creative Writing Award, and I still have it somewhere. But actually, I got probably more into the formal idea of writing at the University of New Mexico in the creative writing program, where I had the requirements for the degree in philosophy taken care of. And again, it was Ronald Reagan paying for school at that time. So I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and double major instead of getting a minor, I'll double major. And I went across campus and I was going to double major in psychology, but that only lasted a semester. And they kind of asked me to go back across campus after I said Sigmund Freud is an idiot. And they don't like that in the psychology department when you say that, but
no, not really.
It's true. But so when I went back across to humanities, I discovered the degree in creative writing. I said, wait, you can get a degree in creative writing? I do that all the time anyway. So it started there. But as far as the military writing, a clear transparency. We were classmates at the University of Tampa, and it had an effect on both of us. I think a positive impact on our writing. But some of the deep readings that I was assigned to do, I came across a book. It's a small book, but it's by a Vietnam poet, Leroy Quintana, and it's called Interrogations. And they're very short poems that are so impactful that it had an influence on me to say, well, I've got these stories that I heard in 2 years in the Army and then 20 years in the Coast Guard, and when I first went into the Army, the senior NCO cadre and a lot of the officers were Vietnam veterans, and they had stories that were eye-opening. The stories that people who went to the Army, went to Vietnam, stayed in the Army, and now we're training new recruits. They were telling these stories that I said, it's not interrogations, but I started a collection of poems called Recordings for Later Listening, and much in the vein of Quintana's book, Interrogations, but just to capture the honest stories that need to be told. And I think there is a definite need to get the truth out there. It's not there we were in the Humvee and the IED went off, and I've had publishers tell me that they were thankful for my work not being another one of those stories, and NFG is not another one of those stories with Mr. Important's work. But along the way, we got the Recon Trilogy +1. It's set in Vietnam to tell the stories. It's total fiction in a situation that captures a lot of what was going around the war. And it's just a matter of using that as your subject matter. It's rich. It's rich in subject matter if you can face the truth. I wrote an essay once actually wrote it at Tampa, and it was published later on, about warrior poets. And when you read warrior poets, none of them are advocates for what they did. Mm-hmm. They're very honest, but it's an eye opener to hear what they say and how they say it. All the way back I went back to World War I and the warrior poets in that war. Rupert Brooke was if I die, think only this of me. But he wasn't in the infantry. He was on board a ship in the harbor when he wrote that. And so you say, well, yeah, who's a big advocate for the effort? I said, well, he wasn't in the effort. And when you start reading the ones who are in the effort, you see a whole different picture that you need to see and read.
Now, what made you guys say, you know what, I have to write this now?
Well, for me, I've been writing it for, I don't know, about 12 years, but I think as far as like getting it published now, I think it's like perfect timing. Like I alluded to earlier, when I first came home, there wasn't much of an appetite for I won't say it's not I don't look at it as an anti-war story, but like it's not it's not propaganda. It's not written from the ego, it's just kind of like the honest truth. And so I think there's an appetite for it now, which is kind of like really good timing. I keep up with a lot of like military podcasts and stuff. And one of the ones I watch is the Sean Ryan show. And, I see him asking people all the time, like, what do you think about the Iraq war? Do you think it was worth it? And you can see veterans, struggling to kind of answer it. They're starting to come out and say, no, it wasn't worth it. And so, but you can see that confliction. And that's what I had when I first came home. It should have been 20 something years now. But when I first came home, I had that confliction of like, I'm not anti-American, it's just that war was a bunch of bullshit, and there was a bunch of stuff that wasn't good that happened. And, you know, hindsight's 2020, but looking back, you know, it's like none of it had anything to do with 9/11. None of it had to do with terrorism and stuff like that. And so now I'm thinking, you know, I'm watching all these vets and they're afraid to speak out even now, 20 years later, against the war. And so I think there's an appetite for it now.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Cool. Ben, what about you?
I think the again, the source material, and I do have a collection called Always Ready. It's poems from a life in the Coast Guard, and it's just the good stories that are there, or the stories that are there. You decide whether they're good or not, but to capture them and get the true depiction of the experience. It's not a Hollywood. It didn't go through the Hollywood filter, and I think with NFG and Mr. Important's work, and I've told him this before because I was his editor, again for clear transparency. The what he has written is the stuff that when people say thank you for your service, they really don't know. But if they read his book, they'll know. What am I thanking you for? And that's where the reality kicks in, the honesty kicks in, and makes his book, one, very well written, two, worth the read, and three, a social conscious kind of book that don't just thank me for my service because I went and you didn't. Thank me for my service because you know what I did, and that's in his book. And I think that's in all military writing if it is honest and it's written with that insider perspective of it wasn't all Hollywood, it wasn't all one shot, one kill up on a roof or whatever. However they filter it and take away all the reality to imagine what it's like, because it's nothing like you imagine.
And kind of piggybacking on that, what kind of an emotional ride can a reader anticipate?
With mine, I think it's again, it was a whole different situation in both the Army and the Coast Guard. The Army, though, even in peacetime Germany, there was some stupid stuff that went on, and you know, there's a poem I write. It's an anniversary poem. I write a version of it every year. In January 26th, it was a Thursday morning, and the soldiers were in the barracks cleaning weapons, and one of them was playing Rambo with an M60 machine gun, and there was a round left in it, and he pulled the trigger. And the first guy coming up the steps caught it in his bicep, and it hit the bone and bounced out, cleared his arm, and caught the next guy in the collarbone and tumbled through everything. And I had a friend who was a medic who they got him to the German hospital, and the German doctor said, you know, you all did a great job keeping his brain alive, but let us show you what you're working with. And they cracked his chest open, and there was nothing. The 7.62 millimeter round takes out everything like it's supposed to. And so you have those experiences, those extreme experiences, but the other side of it is you've got some just human experience that's shared. I remember a petty officer in the Coast Guard asked me once, he said, I was an officer at the time. He said, Mr. White, what's your first name? And I said, well, it's Ben. And he said, Ben White. And you got a brother's name. I still don't know what he meant, but I said, okay, sure. I'll take it as a compliment. You know, of course, he's a black petty officer. And he said, you got a brother's name. I said, well, all right. You know, so you've got the extreme of experience, and it's under a lens that gets you very close to the experience. And so I think the emotion is just maybe surprise, maybe, you know, I want to make you laugh, make you cry, but I don't want to confuse you.
Yeah, I think what's good about those types of stories is, you know, a lot of people, they think of war, they think of like Hamburger Hill, right? Like charging up the hill, this big hoorah. But then it's just like the day-to-day stuff is what soldiers most remember. You know, it's not always the combat stuff. It's just the kind of day-to-day thing. And so that's why I kind of, even though Ben hasn't been to combat, he has all these great stories, man. I mean, even stuff that I've told him he wrote and got published, you know, the Gatorade story. I was like, that's phenomenal writing. And like he was able to take what I told him and write something, you know, impactful. Like I was even like, dang, that's great. And so
the man
yeah,
can
so
write.
just because somebody hasn't been to combat doesn't mean, you know, their stories are any less. You know, there's tons of people that have been in, you know, the military that never seen stuff like that. But then, like you said, you know, your buddy gets shot in the barracks. Like stuff like that happens all the time. There's all kinds of, you know, workplace accidents and stuff. And so, but for me, for like my book, you know, it's war, you know, and I'm not sure if there's a more emotional ride. I mean, it just encompasses so much stuff, you know, from like leaving your family behind, you know, and now you got to go face this enormous amount of danger. And it's just like, that's a heavy weight. You know, I was 20 when I got deployed in January. And then, you know, I turned 21 on deployment. So I was, you know, I was just a kid. I wasn't even able to drink when I first got deployed. And so, you know, and then you got to leave your family and, you know, all those emotions start coming back. A lot of stuff in your childhood, you start thinking about things and it's like, you know, it's like somebody turned a faucet on, you know, those emotions just come flooding through you, you know, and I mean, it's every emotion, right? Fear, sadness, homesickness, you know, longing for the good times of your childhood. You know, you're sitting there after a mortar attack and all you can think about is home, which is kind of funny, you know, when you're a soldier and you're at home, all you can think about is going to war. And then when you get to war, all you can think about is getting home. And when you get home after war, all you can think about is going back to war. So you're stuck kind of in this weird loop. And so, I mean, but it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, there's like that sense of togetherness, the camaraderie, you know, the joy, the laughter, you know, the oh shit moments. You know, we had a guy, he was in the shitter during a mortar attack. And he's like, you know, after the mortar attack, everybody, you know, they put their brave faces back on. He's like, man, I didn't have a time to wipe my ass or anything. I just got up and ran. And then we went back to the porta-john that he was in and it had shrapnel through the porta-john. So if he would have stayed in there, he probably would have been dead. But it's just those kind of like funny moments, you know, of like, damn, he survived. That's crazy, but it's just a funny story, you know. And so you have like a whole range of emotions that goes through you. So I mean, it's the perfect setting, right, to kind of write about the microcosm of life. You know, you feel it all. I mean, the highs, the lows, the twists, the turns. It's crazy.
So piggybacking on that, I seem to be doing that a lot right now. But like, so what? I can only imagine how much you relived or re-experienced those moments in your works. What was the hardest things for you to write?
Oh man, let's see. I mean, for me, it was like reliving the horrible stuff I talked about earlier, right? Like the, you know, the prisoner. We had to transport a guy, and they nicknamed him Trigger because the Iraqi police snuck a 9mm into the prison and he shot one of the guards, but the guard had his plates on and it saved his life. But they tortured the crap out of that guy. And so one of my jobs was always taking the prisoners to Baghdad International Airport to get treatment and stuff. And so I had to, I was like only one of a few people that would admit they could drive a stick shift. So we always have to transport those people. And I had to transport him and they made me ride in the back with them. And yeah, so I got like up close and personal, and you know, you could see where they took the rubber pellets from a shotgun, and they shot him point blank range, and you could see the tiny white circles on his dark tan body, you know, and it's just like hearing those screams. Like I can't be around screaming babies because it, you know, triggers me, which is kind of ironic, but Yeah, it's like that, seeing dead prisoners with half their face shot off, just that constant fear, when you're every day, we would get attacked like every other day, a couple times a week. But even when you're not getting attacked, you're still a heightened sense of awareness. And it's just like, every day you're walking to the chow hall, looking up at the sky, thinking a mortar is just going to fall on my head at any moment. It's like, you got to relive all of that when you're writing. And it's tough, man. Like, it's not easy. It's like, because those emotions come back. And so you just got to fight through it. But
how about you, Ben?
It's that honesty stuff. I think the author has to be honest about it, and even though it's tough, like was just described there, it's got to be done. It's compelled. You're compelled. If you're going to sit down and write it. If not, go do something else. But and that is hard, because you've got to say, well, am I getting it right? And even the stories, you want them to come across with as much emotion as was lived, at a much younger age. You're looking back 20 years, sometimes 40 years. And because I turned 22 on my first Saturday in Germany, but that first birthday away from home, it's got emotional impact, but you want it, if you're going to write about it, you got to write it and get it right. And because there's some, like I say, there's some great stuff. There's some funny stuff, because it's humans in weird situations. And I remember the gunner and the assistant gunner on the mechanized mortar team. They got the fire for effect. It was at the live range. They got fire for effect, and they one dropped it, one dropped it, one dropped it, the other one dropped it. Whoops. Because now you got the mortar double loaded, and they spun out of there about 35 yards at the most, and it could have killed the whole line. And so if you write about that, you've got to get that sense of urgency in the writing, because it was not a good day in the 1st and 51st Infantry when that happened. But it was just a human mistake. They double loaded the mortar and got in a hurry, double loaded the mortar, and they both came out at the same time and exploded about the same time, not too far away. But so I think the subject matter itself is hard to relive and hard to write. But then there's a different facet, another angle on it to, am I getting it right? I'm feeling it, but am I getting the feelings down on paper and to where it comes across? And that's the challenge of the writer. Makes it even harder to write about.
And piggybacking on that, so where were you in your respective lives when you really could tell this was starting to take shape? And yeah, what did that look like?
Yeah, I think it was the MFA program is when it really kind of started to take shape. Like, I had the idea in my head. It was just a seed at that point that had been planted. And so by the time the MFA graduation, like, I had to read a piece in front of everybody. And it's just a piece that I was just clowning around, just kind of being funny. And I had to read it in front of everybody. And I thought everybody was going to kill me because, I'm making fun of their beloved poet, Sylvia Plath. And it was like, I read that and the reaction was like, whoa, like very overwhelming for me, because I was like, damn, I was just kidding around, but like people just were laughing and everything. And then that's when I was like, well, that sucks, because now I got to take the rest of the book and bring it to that level. And so that was kind of like, damn it, I just caused myself a lot of work. And so, yeah. That for me was kind of like the aha moment of like, okay, there's something to this. So,
yeah, and the rest of the story of that day when he was reading in front of everybody, he was actually reading in front of me because I was going next.
Oh,
and I said, why? How did that happen? Why do I have to go after that? But I got my revenge when I was editing his book and told him, oh, okay, I know you have that higher plane. I don't want you there all the time, but when you get there, you've got us. And so you've got to get us there. You don't have to do it all the time. Sometimes the roller coaster cranks up the hill, but when we're coming down that hill, you've got that level of writing that you have to do. And that reading at Tampa haunted him as I was his editor, but I did that on purpose.
Yeah, Ben wouldn't let me be lazy or cheap out. He kept on me, and so that was.
I knew what he could do. I knew what he could do and made him do it.
Yeah, he was like
See
a
what
good drill
happens?
sergeant.
So
But-
what surprised you most about writing, and either writing it or honestly even Ben, you being his editor and basically following him through his journey? Is there anything that surprised you most, and vice versa?
It was good writing throughout, and I knew the story, and I didn't know the story, but I knew that he was writing the story, and that he was being very honest about the story, and so there was always that call when it lost energy, when his writing lost energy, and I told him it lost energy, and however I said it, he got it, he knew it. And he said, "Yeah, he would even tell me it doesn't feel like I want it to feel. It's not coming across on the page like I want it to come across." And you know, as the editor, to encourage him and say, "Well, it's there. It's just a matter of you getting on that plane, that roller coaster plane that I know you can do, and get there and make it real." And so that was. It wasn't hard. I mean, we had a great discussion. From my point of view, it was hope encouraging, but it was never an argument because we both knew what he could do and the energy level that he had and that he could apply.
So how about you, Mr. Florida?
Yeah. For me, what surprised me most was just that I had the ability to write a whole book that, you know, is coherent and not just a bunch of ramblings. Cause, you know, you can kind of go on tangents and stuff. And then thankfully Ben will get me back on track when I do that. But, you know, I kind of like it. It's like, you know, somebody climbing Mount Everest, right? You train for it, you prepare for it. But in the back of your mind, you know, you're always questioning yourself, you know, do I have what it takes to make it? You know, can I push through it? You know, it's a daunting task. And to be able to do that kind of surprised me because, you know, I thought I could do it, but then when you actually do it, it's like, damn, like I did it. And it's like, wow. And it's coherent. And, but I think a lot of that has to do with Ben too, you know, giving me encouragement over the years. And then I call it like the enhancements that he does, you know, It's just little subtle things, but man, they make like an impact. Like one of the, you know, we had these, what do they call the little fly traps that hang from the ceiling. And then, you know, I do this whole sort of metaphor thing about these flies that are attracted to the sticky, shiny glue. And then Ben added in like, oh, you know, like soldiers are attracted to like 30-cent medals. And just to kind of take it, you know, his poetry background and just kind of, it really made that whole scene just pop from just me staring at flies on a sticky thing hanging down from the ceiling. But, you know, yeah, Ben surprised me with a lot of his stuff. I was like, man, this is good stuff. This is like the right editor. I mean, he doesn't try to like overpower and be like, oh, you need to do it this way. And, you know, impart his vision on what you're doing. He just, you know, little subtle jabs here or there, you know, puts his little fingerprints all over it, you know, and honestly, I can't be happier to have him, you know, knowing his background and have him as the editor. It's like the perfect editor for this project because a lot of people try to put their thinking and, you know, their vision and it becomes their book and not yours. And Ben just enhances it, which is great. So he surprised me a lot. There's more. We'll let you read the book and figure out what's mine, what's his.
It's all yours. It's all yours.
Now,
it's
you
like
know, I have to
95%
ask.
mine.
You know, I have to ask for both of your works. What what almost didn't make it into the book, and why did you keep it in?
That's a good question. You want to go with that one, Ben? You go first. I don't want you yelling at me because I went first and you had to follow me again.
I got the again. I'll go back to the Recon trilogy. It started with Triggerfish 1-2. That was the first. It's 4 narrative poems, and the first one was Triggerfish 1-2, and it was written as the thesis to get out of Tampa, but it was I had a great editor in Sandra Beasley, and she encouraged the story the whole way through, and I'll give her credit every day. But there was a character in there called the Scarecrow Angel that the premise is there's a lieutenant wounded with a head wound in the jungle. He's waiting for a medevac. He's talking on a radio that has a severed cord. He's not talking to anybody, but he's talking to everybody, and they're answering up. And as he's waiting, Scarecrow Angel comes back, and Scarecrow Angel was his imaginary friend when he was little. And it's a William Blake idea of what would you say to your imaginary friend later on if they came back to visit you as an adult, what would you tell them? And Sandra told me that it's almost one too many characters like that, and I can see what she said, because he was visited. Abraham from the Bible came and visited him, and so everybody visited this guy. But so to save it, I really like the character, and I like the concept of having the childhood imaginary friend come back. It came out of Triggerfish, but it went back into the second narrative poem in the book as Scarecrow Angel, and so I saved him. He didn't stay in Triggerfish 1-2, but I saved him for Scarecrow Angel to come back and visit a soldier again in Vietnam on watch at 3 a.m, and they have a conversation, and it was fun to write. So I wanted to save him for sure, but she was right in telling me that it really doesn't fit in Triggerfish 1-2, and so it was a darling I killed there, but I didn't kill him all the way. I saved the idea.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that with Sandra Beasley. She was a great mentor of mine. She was my first mentor. And then, when you get to the University of Tampa, they make you pick like your mentor. So what do? You get on, you Google everybody, and when I first Googled her, she was a feminist poet who writes about peanut allergies. And I was like, what the, being the big bad military guy, I'm like, what the fuck is this, and man, I couldn't have been more wrong about that, man. Like, she really opened my mind, especially on like the poetry stuff like that. I mean, her fingerprints are all over the book as far as like the poetry techniques and stuff like that. And then I started getting into like the women's issues. She had me read some books about like a female reporter who was embedded with the 101st Airborne during the invasion of 2003 when I was over there. And that kind of got me thinking, okay, outside of just me, before it was just kind of very ego driven, like, oh, I was in the Army, I did this, I did that. And, then you kind of like step back and it's like, okay, there's a lot of people over here, not just me. And so for her, I was real thankful for that. But as far as what almost didn't make it in the book, I would say it's probably like the foul mouth language, very offensive language. I kind of wrestled with that quite a while, going back and forth. And, I thought about, like the things they carry is like sort of very flowery, poetic. Lieutenant Cross is, carries her picture in his helmet, and it's sort of like this love kind of thing going on. And I was like, that's not really me. And so I was kind of like, I could make it more digestible for the reader, but then I was like, where the fuck is the fun in that? Like, I always consider myself as more of a elevator attendant than a writer. I just enjoy pushing people's buttons. So I just kept it in there. I grew up on the George Carlin, Dave Chappelle, very, pushing the boundaries. What was George Carlin had the seven sins or something you couldn't say on television. And so I grew up with that, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to keep it in there. But yeah, I kind of wrestled with that. I think the reading at UT kind of sealed it that I was going to keep it in there, because I read some pretty offensive stuff and I thought all these people were going to kill me, and they all laughed and enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll just keep it in there. And so, yeah, but it was kind of hard because I was like the height of the cancel culture. You couldn't say this, couldn't say that, but then it wouldn't be authentic because the military, everybody's a foul mouth, power drinking, horny fuck, and it's just like you're going to war, you're going to fucking die. So what do you want to do? You want to, debauchery, right? It's like getting married. It's your one last stand before you go. And so, yeah, it's stayed in. Spoiler alert.
Now, who do you think is going to fall hardest for your book, for your writing?
Oh, I'd say anybody who's not a fucking square, outlaws, outsiders, if you're a tightwad, walking around with your belt buckled waist high, up towards your belly button, you suit and tie people, probably not going to want to read it. I think, people who served in the military, especially ones that have been to combat, I think will really enjoy it. I've had in the MFA program, I had people that didn't go to combat that couldn't understand my war stories. Like, that's not what they had that still patriotic kind of view of the military, and it was kind of like mine's a little bit of both, and so I think anybody who wants the truth about the war, I think will really enjoy it.
How about you, Ben?
I think when you see something like the Recon Trilogy +1, and you even the cover with the silhouettes of the soldiers, I think it creates a stereotypical war novel. It's not a novel anyway. It's 4 different poems, but long narrative poems. But so I think as the feedback that I've gotten on it is from people who, it was nothing like I expected, but it's a great story, and there's great stories in there. So it appeals once they get past the cover and their own biases and their own prejudgments. They'll appreciate the storytelling, and even in my poems, it's painting the room, and you start on the outside walls, and you paint the floor until you take the reader painting the floor. Each round gets smaller and smaller, and then at the last line, they're stuck. They're in the center of the room, and they can't leave unless they get paint all over the shoes. And that's where I want them. That's where I want them, because that's where the meaning is. Back to the will for meaning. And it's not a will for power. It's not a will for pleasure. It's a will for meaning. Do you get it? And this is lived experience. You didn't have to live it to understand it, but do you understand it? And that's the key.
Now, is there anything that readers have told you they just weren't expecting? And what was it?
The feedback I've heard is just kind of like the honesty. Like I said, everybody kind of goes into these books with the like war novels with an expectation it's going to be all combat stuff, and it's just going to be nice and clean, right? Like, we want our steak, but we don't want to see how it gets killed, kind of thing. And so when they, eat my steak, the cows in the background getting slaughtered. So.
And
how about you, Mr. Ben?
The feedback is the surprise, and because in Triggerfish 1-2, one scene, it was actually the first idea. It was where the book started, where the poem started, was what if an infantry soldier in Vietnam wakes up one day and he's patrolling Woodstock, and the music festival in Woodstock, New York. And what would that soldier, as he walked through, what would he see? What would he feel? What would he think? And that mixing of two very important events in the 60s, having them come together in such a way is a surprise for a lot of readers who they weren't expecting it. I would have never put the infantry soldier in Woodstock, but I said, well, they're happening at the same time. What if he woke up there? Then the feedback I got already for Down Along Highway 90 was from a high school classmate, and she said, I laughed, I cried, and I remembered all the way through it. Everything you wrote is right there. It's just the way it was. But I don't mean it to be nostalgic. I just mean it to have meaning of what it was like to be there.
Mm.
Nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
Now, so what kind of mood should someone be in when they go in and they're going for the first 20 pages?
Probably be drunk. Maybe smoke a joint, smoke a little weed or something before you get into it.
I'll give you the feedback from an editor about your book was, man, how did you edit that? I got 5 pages in. I had to put it down. It was too intense. And I said, well, I knew him.
He did too. That's exactly what he said.
And I said, well, that's the intent. That's keep reading. That's what you that's what you're thanking us for.
Yeah. All right. So give us the 1-sentence version of why someone should pick up this book.
I would say just the emotional honesty. I've read a lot of book and people kind of tiptoe around things, but the emotional honesty is the one line I think, even hearing Ben, I don't really like to talk about my stuff like that, but just hearing Ben talk, the emotional honesty, that's kind of one thing that comes up. And I think that should resonate hopefully with readers and they can make it past the first 5 pages.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Sir Ben?
Just the approach to it to get the deeper meanings, because even though it's kind of a fantasy ride through a head injury. You give somebody a head injury, you can have anything happen to them, have them go anywhere because it's all in their head. But there's the deeper aspects of society that is going on behind it. What did that character know to think about that, even with a head injury? It's like when you have one of those dreams that just totally makes sense to you as you dream it, and then you wake up and say, I have no idea what that was. But the story gets you into the dream. When you're reading it, you're in the dream. And it makes total sense. Of course, when you step back and say, there's no way it could have happened. But that's okay, because the overall human experience with the influence of society along the way is the challenge. And it's not when in the Recon trilogy, the last poem is called El Dorado, where the soldier meets one of Pancho Villa's elite golden guards. And he tells him that the soldier's on his way to Vietnam, and they're on the Greyhound bus together. And the old man tells him the U.S. is not going to win there. And, that's telling a soldier that and getting the soldier's response. What do you mean? We're the United States. There's no way we're going to lose in Vietnam. And he said, you're up against guerrilla war tactics that have greater resolve, and you're just not going to win. And of course, I got history on my side to prove that. But to put you in a situation on a bus for a soldier to hear it from an old revolutionary from the Mexican Revolution. It's a different perspective that is a different way to hear it and see it.
Now, is there anything that we didn't talk about that we should?
The book is not all doom and gloom.
Although you're going to say it like it's doom and gloom.
Well, you know, you make it fresh the first couple chapters. There's dark humor. You know, I think I thought back when I was writing it, I was like, how did we get through it? You know, and it was dark humors. You know, there's a lot of dark humor in there, just to kind of help get me through. But then when I was thinking about it, I was like, how am I going to get the reader through a lot of this heavy material? And so the dark humor is one way. That's one technique that I use. And then, you know, I kind of cut back and talk about my childhood and stuff, growing up in Tampa and all the wild craziness and the partying and stuff. And so there's a couple of fun chapters in there. So it's not all doom and gloom. Just put that disclaimer out there.
And he's got classmates you can Google.
That's true.
White.
No, I'm talking about your Tampa classmates in high school.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, my pornography friend.
Oh boy.
And no, he's lying. I'm gonna look it up. I looked it up.
She's famous.
Okay. How about you, Ben? Anything that we didn't cover that
just a point about why it gets written and how long it takes for it to sink in before you can write it. It goes back, and I think I'll get some agreement here, and it's already been alluded to, so I know it will. But it's when you go into the military, that person who went never comes back. And because I don't mean, they don't survive. I mean, the ones who survive are not, they come back, they're not the same person. And I found it out getting out after 2 years in the Army. I came back to Kentucky, and Kentucky was the same, but I didn't fit. I didn't fit in. And that was 2 years of peacetime Germany, Cold War experience that changed me to the point where you just don't come back. You don't make it back. All of you doesn't make it back in varying degrees. I think depending on the experience, there's varying degrees of not being able to make it back. So you got to wait. You got to wait to write about it till it's time.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell the Cold War short too. That was a pretty intense period, with the Cuban Missile Crisis was only 15, 20 years before the 80s. And, the East-West Germany, there was a lot of spying going on, and there's still threats of nuclear war. And so there's a lot of espionage going on. It wasn't maybe as at the forefront of America like the GWOT era, but I mean, there was still quite a bit of tension there that I wouldn't sell short. That's still an important part of our history. You can just go ask the Germans that were on the east side, living under Soviet rule, and then what their families thought about that lived on the west side, under America rule. And so there was still quite a bit of pretty important stuff that was happening. And
yeah, there was some good stories came out of there. I remember the kid from Indiana who got approached one day at a bar to they asked him to break into the armory and steal M16s for the Red Army. Oh, wow. And this kid he was just in over his head. He was so scared to death. I think he never left the barracks again.
Yeah. What was that? Buffalo Soldiers? That was written about Germany during the 80s, right?
Yeah.
What was that? Joaquin Phoenix, I think, played the lead character.
Joaquin Phoenix was there. And it's one of the few that came out of there. There's not too many books or movies that came out of '80s in Europe, but it was an interesting time in the military for sure. They weren't real sure. Of course, these were all Vietnam veterans who had put up with drug use in Vietnam, and so drug use in Germany, they didn't know what to do with it. It was a 4-0 tolerance, and they said, you're a good kid, just stop it. and you'll save your career. And so there was a whole transition there. And I've said it before in some of my writings, I was never the heir apparent to their organization. I appreciated what they had done and how they trained me to be a soldier, but I was not ever going to be I was never going to inherit their organization. And they knew it. They didn't want me to.
I can't imagine that they would.
Yeah. No, you're not the one.
Nah.
You ended up in the better branch anyways. Coast Guard was my original love. I wanted to go on the Coast Guard, then 9/11 happened. I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to go to Alaska and just fish on the weekends.
Mm.
I was like, Coast Guard would be perfect for that.
Yeah. There were coaches who went and never came
There
back.
you go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had a guy who tell me once the whale deck of the 41 was the back towards the fantail, and he was in the bayous in southern Louisiana one night, and he said a state Marine officer came by and flipped on his blue light. And he said, well, blue light to blue light, I flipped mine on too. And he went by and we waved. The state guy waved. I waved to him. He waved back. And he said, sir, it was a good thing because I had an alligator poached in the whale deck. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. He was out poaching alligators in the bayou.
And with that, honestly, I think that's a perfect place to end this live stream. Go Gators! Thank you, gentlemen. Greatly appreciate the time. And for anybody who's watching, don't miss us. Actually, we'll be online tomorrow night as well for another Ask Us Anything. So with that, again, thank you both. And for anyone watching, have a fantastic night.